Statutory warning. This video contains legal jargons which are not recommended for people who are not preparing for law. So if you're not preparing for law, watch it at your own risk. Hello everyone, welcome to this video on legal aptitude for CLAT and IELTS. Legal aptitude is all about two things. One, knowledge in the field of law, and two, applying logical reasoning to this knowledge. In this video, we'll start and try to absorb some knowledge in the field of law. So as we set sail in the journey of legal knowledge, let's try to get our boats ready. That is, let's learn some basic legal terms and maxims. And this, we're going to do it in a very interesting way, that is, in the form of a story. And the story goes like this. There were two guys, A and B, who were good friends ab initio, that is, from the beginning. Time passed by and they slowly developed this bad habit of stealing. So first they started with small thefts, which then got transformed into extortions and robberies. And then three more guys, C, D and E, joined them, and together they started committing dacoity. Terms that we have learned so far. 1. Ab initio, which means from the beginning. This is quite clear from the word itself because initio is initial, which means from the beginning. Usage, void ab initio. This means something which is invalid right from the beginning. Example, a contract with a minor is void ab initio. That means you cannot make a contract with someone who is less than 18 years of age in India. 2. Theft. According to the section 378 of the Indian Penal Code IPC, theft is defined as an offence of taking away the movable property of a person without his consent and with a dishonest intention. Keywords that we've learned here. Movable property. Any property which is not fixed to the ground is a movable property. For example, your car, your bike, a pen, a pencil and your wallet are movable properties. Immovable properties are those which are fixed to the ground. For example, house, your land and a tree in your house are immovable properties. But it is worth noting that if an immovable property is severed from earth, it becomes a movable property. For example, if a tree is cut down, it becomes a movable property and it comes under the purview of theft. 2. Dishonest intention. While proving the crime of theft, it is very important to prove that the intention behind the crime was dishonest. For example, say if your friend takes away your bike for a day and returns it in the evening, it may not come under theft because he shares a fiduciary relationship with you, that is, a relationship based on trust, and thus his act may not be called a theft. The punishment for theft in India, according to IPC section 379, is 3 years of imprisonment or fine or both. The next term is extortion. According to section 383 of IPC, it is an aggravated form of theft. That is, a case in which a person puts someone else under the threat of injury or death and takes away his movable or immovable property. The key element that differentiates extortion from theft is threat of injury or death, which is missing in case of theft. One more key difference between extortion and theft is that extortion can also be of immovable property, whereas theft can only be of a movable property. An example of extortion would be that a person keeps you at gunpoint and takes away your property. Next term is robbery. A robbery is very similar to extortion, with the only difference being that in case of a robbery, there is a threat of immediate violence or damage, whereas in case of extortion, usually this threat is of future violence or damage. Again, these two terms, extortion and robbery, are not mutually exclusive, as sometimes a robbery can also be an extortion. For example, in that case where a person points a gun at someone else and asks for his property, it is both a robbery as well as an extortion. The next term is dacoity. A dacoity is a robbery which involves 5 or more people. Do you remember from our story C, D, and E joining A and B to commit dacoity? That makes it 5. Hey, by the way, do you know that this term dacoity has been derived from the Hindi term daku? And in other countries, there is no term like dacoity. Other countries use the word banditry for this. And now let's go back to our story where A and B were going all guns blazing with their thefts. In all these thefts, A was the main culprit and B used to aid and abet him. To put it simply, B was his accomplice. One day, when they were stealing, the ground started shaking. "Oh my God, it's an earthquake, an act of God," shouted A and ran away. But poor B couldn't. The wall of the building they were stealing from fell over B, and his hand got stuck under the wall, and he started bleeding profusely. And after some time, A returned to find his friend B in terrible pain. He tried to help him out, but all in vain. He couldn't do anything. Then he thinks, instead of letting his friend die a painful death, why not kill him? He takes a knife that he had in his pocket and stabs his friend. That was actus reus. Terms we have learnt from this part of the video. 1. Aid and abet. Aiding and abetting both talk about assisting in performance of a crime. Aiding is generally related with material assistance. For example, providing a pistol for the crime. And abetting is generally lesser assistance. For example, acting as a lookout or driving a car to the scene of crime. The next term is actus reus. Actus reus is the physical act of committing a crime. Basically, in a crime, there are two parts. One, the intent or the motive behind the crime, which is called mens rea. And the second part is the physical act of committing the crime, which is actus reus. For example, when a person thinks of stealing someone's car and selling it for money, he has a guilty mind. He knows that his act is not correct. And that guilty mind or that thought is mens rea. And finally, when he commits that act, he steals it and sells it, that physical act is actus reus. And the next term is act of God. Any natural calamities which are out of human control are called act of God. For example, volcano eruptions, earthquakes, tsunami, storms are all act of God. And now let's go back to our story. So B was dead, and on investigation, it was found that A was the one who stabbed him to death. So police arrests him and takes him to the court, where out of fear, A claims that he wasn't present at the crime scene when all this happened, but his alibi of not being at the crime scene wasn't accepted because his fingerprints were found on the knife that was used to stab B. And then there was more bad news for A. When his wife came to know about his inhuman act of killing his own friend, she divorced him and asked him for alimony. So nothing was going A's way. But his Acche then were not far away. A foreign lady named Amy Cure had seen the whole incident of A killing B. So she narrated this whole incident in the court and explained why A had to kill B. So basically, she acted as amicus curiae in this case and thus helped the court reach a decision easily. And this was the first time that the court was listening to A's side of the story, that is, audi alteram partem. Terms that we have learned from this part of the video. 1. Alibi. Alibi is the plea that a person charged with a crime was somewhere else when the crime was committed. For example, if a crime is committed in Bombay and you can prove that at the time of crime you were in Delhi, you have an alibi. And the next term is alimony. Alimony is the financial provision made by a husband to his wife when they are divorced or living apart. This is generally in the form of money or property. The next term is amicus curiae. Hey, you remember the name of the lady who came to A's rescue, Amy Curiae? What did she do in the story? Basically, she helped the court reach a decision easily. The meaning of the word amicus curiae is also the same. Amicus curiae literally means a friend of the court. It refers to those people who are not exactly linked to the case but still help the court reach a decision. And also, it's worth noting here that this word amicus is derived from the Latin word amigo, which means a friend. And the last term that we learned in this video was audi alterum partem, which literally means listen to the other side or let the other side be heard as well. It is the principle that no person should be judged without listening to his part of the story. So these were some of the terms and maxims that will help you crack the legal aptitude section. In the next video, we'll be taking some more terms and spinning a story around it. Adios, amigos.